life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days.
Good evening. Good afternoon, everybody. Keith Engle from TGI Sports Talk here with Let's Talk New York Sports and a little bit of the surrounding area, given we do talk about the New England Patriots. We do talk about UConn basketball and football, let's say, New Jersey. Anyway, my co-host, actually the host of the show, I'm his co-host, Dan Harris, is still recuperating, starting to do a lot more behind the scenes. He and I hopefully will get together again soon on the same stage here. And we are broadcasting now live on the Let's Talk Sports YouTube page, as well as TGI Sports Talk's Facebook, and I think my own Facebook page. So we do welcome all of you that are watching through those venues who will watch later on. We do try to stick to New York sports as best we can here. We do veer off the path now and again when comments come up. Less so when I'm doing the show than when Dan is. But I think that's I think when Dan's here, it's because I take it elsewhere. I also am experimenting with the Major League Baseball update that I do for Let's Talk Sports, being live on YouTube. I just did it here a little bit ago. And we'll continue to do that. The timing of it might vary a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. And we want to continue to try to get you guys to like and share the shows, follow both Let's Talk Sports and TGI Sports Talk on YouTube, on Facebook. Please like and share and follow the shows, and send them to your friends. Get them invited. On Facebook, you can easily invite your friends, and on YouTube, I think you can as well. I'm trying to get more versed in the world of YouTube as we go forward here. Also, we'll be diving back in. I talked to Dan today because I've been wanting, I started out my podcasting career doing interviews with former players, with current writers, people who have written sports books and whatnot. And guys, whoever comes in today, I certainly encourage you to comment and say hello, if nothing else, and let us know that you're here. And we'll take your comments, and you can feel free to bring up topics within New York sports that you want to chat about. I was talking about how I started out doing interviews with former athletes, people who authors who have books out now, and writers with some of the local New York papers and writers across the country. And I'm going to get back to some of that in the coming year, hopefully in the coming months. It's something that I have a passion for. It's what I started doing, as well as my own commentary. But I have a passion for nostalgia and want to do that. So anyway, we're going to get into New York sports here today, guys. And again, I encourage you, please, to comment. We'll get into we're going to certainly start with Buffalo. There's a lot to talk about there. We'll talk the Giants, the Jets. We'll talk the Patriots. We'll talk Knicks and Nets. We'll talk Yankees and Mets a little bit, and also a little bit of the college scene in New York sports. So again, we encourage you to be part of the show. Say hello, add a comment on something I might mention, or bring a topic up of your own, and we'll certainly jump into it as best we can. Why don't we start with the Damar Hamlin episode on the game Monday night. Very tragic, very sad turn of events early in that game with the Bills trailing Cincinnati. A lot of uproar with the league handling it immediately. I think the league has recouped a little bit from, I think, the bad look that they had that night about whether the game would be continued or not. I will tell you that there's some very good news, as Damar is off the ventilator now today. He continues to make a very strong recovery. You know, whether he plays football again or not is not important. This young man's health is, and by all accounts, he's making a very strong recovery. Now, in the days to come, we'll find out what actually caused the injury and what kind of damage was done, and see what kind of outlook there'll be going forward. Now, encouragingly, and I think what helps all of us as fans and his team, and everybody move on and get back towards the business of football while we continue to root and pray for his continued recovery, is the fact that his first words, even though they were written to his doctors, was, "Who won the game?" It takes a little of the onus off. And again, I think there was a lot of backlash early on. And, some of the people were asking questions too soon, maybe, about what happens with that game, what happens with the games going forward. But I don't think it wasn't okay to ask those questions. And still, you were thinking about this young man's recovery. And I was afraid he was dead on the field, guys. And I don't doubt we'll find out maybe he was. At the same time, after the reality was we were going to have to wonder what happened with this football game and football going forward. And that doesn't diminish the importance of this young man's health and life. And I don't think anybody who was asking those questions didn't care about what happened to this young man. I think it's unfair to characterize it. We don't care about the human if we ask a question about the games. Now, shouldn't have been doing it while he was lying there on the field. So anyway, he's doing better. The Bills, the NFL, I think has now finalized their plan. I guess we'll go through this real quick for the championship game and the home field advantage, and also how they would determine a wild card game between the Bengals and the Ravens. So if Buffalo and Kansas City both win or tie, the Bills-Chiefs championship game will be played at a neutral site. Kansas City played one more game as the Bills game was called a no contest. If Buffalo and Kansas City both lose and Baltimore wins or ties, a Bills-Chiefs championship game will be played at a neutral site. I'm not sure how that's any different than what I just said. If Buffalo and Kansas City both lose and Kansas City wins, a Bills or Bengals versus Chiefs championship game would be at a neutral site. So it looks like the championship game in the AFC will be at a neutral site. I feel bad for the fans of that city. I feel bad for the team that could have won. We don't know who that would have been. There was no perfectly fair answer here, but I think they've come up with the best idea that they could have. You couldn't add playoff teams. That would have been ridiculous. Also, I think if the Ravens win Sunday over the Bengals and are matched against Cincinnati in the AFC wildcard, the home site would be determined by a coin flip. I think all of this is as good as you could have gotten. Now, I think I would have preferred if they'd given the team that did win, say it was the Chiefs or the Bills. And what happens if Bills win and Kansas City loses? Where's that? What's funny is they don't talk about that. The Bills win. Don't know. I don't know what happens if the Bills win. I would think the Bills would get the game at home, which wouldn't seem quite fair either, right? I mean, Buffalo's got a chance to get the game at home and Kansas City doesn't. Oh, here it is. If Buffalo wins and Kansas City loses, the Bills would be number one seed, get to bye, and no neutral sites would come into play. All right. So the Bills kind of win out here, to be honest with you. I think they get the best of both worlds. So I don't understand. What if other teams, only a Bills-Chiefs championship game would be played at a neutral site, or a Bengals-Chiefs championship game would be played at a neutral site? Buffalo can get it. Kansas City and Cincinnati cannot. I'm not sure they couldn't have come up with a better plan than this. These are smarter men than me, and they get paid more money than me to make these decisions. But I'm not so sure that's fair to the other teams here. But nothing was going to really be fair. And again, Zach Taylor, who, again, we will give kudos to Zach Taylor and McDermott for their handling of their teams in the aftermath of this tragedy, or at least near tragedy. He does feel that his team is at a disadvantage by this proposal. It's nice to have our ownership in front of support the team like they have. That's not important for us, but he doesn't feel the league is looking out for them. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This does favor the Bills more than anybody else. They can get a home field advantage. Kansas City cannot. The Bengals cannot, at least not against the Bills. They can against other teams. So it's very interesting. Very interesting decision, but it's better to me than adding a eighth team to the playoff field. Not fair to teams that have already given up, let's say, a week ago. Well, they should have been playing to win anyway, but anyway, we move on. Some of the vitriol on Facebook this week, I talked about it in my blog, which you'll see at 5:00 today here on Let's Talk Sports, on Northeast Streaming Sports as well. Also on my Facebook pages, and I'll talk a lot more about this in detail. Buffalo this week will get the Patriots. Buffalo still can get home field advantage if the Chiefs should lose to the Raiders. Could happen. It's a rivalry game, so anything could happen, as messed up as the Raiders situation is now. Buffalo, and listen, as a Patriot fan, I'd rather, and this is strictly from my heart, not from a football standpoint or anything. I'd rather be playing anybody but the Bills this week. Not because I think they'll be more fired up to win for their fallen teammate. And I wouldn't be shocked, by the way, to see a little video message or something to the fans from Hamlin on the board this week, and I hope there is. The reason I don't want to be playing the Bills is because it's just such a tough situation to be rooting against them. I root against the Bills all the time. I dislike the Bills as a Patriot fan, but I will root for my team this week because that's what we do. We root for our teams. I'm not going to suddenly become a Bills fan and root for them because of this tragedy. I don't think that makes me a bad person or anybody else who roots against the Bills this weekend. Looking at the game, it's going to be a tough, the Patriots have put themselves in a position where they need a winner to get in. I think their only other option would be Jacksonville beats Tennessee, Miami loses, and the Steelers lose. We don't want to count on all of that. And I'm not even sure about that scenario. They win and they're in. They need to keep the ball. They need to control the football. They need to score points when they get into the red zone. This Buffalo team will be tough to beat this week, though, guys. They're tough to beat anyway. It's a really good football team. The Mad New Yorker likes to talk about their lack of a running game. Lack of running game has not kept this team from getting to the Super Bowl the last couple of years. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals have. Well, the Bengals haven't beat them. Kansas City Chiefs have, the last 2 years. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. This team's good enough to get to and win a Super Bowl the way it's constituted today. Josh Allen is a freak. He is a guy who's got now in a lot of cases, it looks like the touch of a Tom Brady and the ability to run over guys and run the ball like nobody else, by the way, because, Lamar Jackson, Josh Fields, these guys are great runners, but Josh Allen takes on defenders. Now, the emotion that they'll carry with them Sunday could have a really positive effect for them, or it could have a negative effect. We'll see how it plays out. And I wish them well. I just wish them not to win. I'm sorry, but I'm a Patriot fan. Patriots have got to keep the ball, control the ball, as I said, still banged up on defense. To me, there's every reason to think Buffalo will win this game, but I will come up with a reason that I think the Patriots can sneak this out. They got to play a perfect football game. Make no mistake. Mac Jones has got to be better than he's been pretty much every game this year. Matt Patricia's got to dial up the plays better than he has all year. The dumb penalties have got to stop. The bad special teams play has got to stop. With that said, Buffalo will give them everything they got, plus more. Plus they're playing for their fallen teammate. Going to be tough for my Patriots to win this game, but they'll give it their best. They're in a tough position this week, and I hope they do win. Moving on to the Giants. The Giants are in the playoffs, guys. I believe they're locked into that 6th spot. Their game does mean something because I believe a Cowboy win over the Eagles still give the Cowboys a chance to win the NFC East and home field advantage. Minnesota's still alive. Although I gotta believe they're gonna lose a tiebreaker, right? They lost head-to-head. I can't believe they're not alive. There's no way. I think they're locked into number 2. See, does this tell me? They clinch a division. That's all it tells me. But I don't think they've got any way to win the home field. I think Dallas does, based on a better division record and a tied head-to-head. Giants have played really good football, guys. Nice win for them last week in Seattle. Was it in Seattle? Who'd they play last week? Sorry about that. Let me just double check. Oh, against the Titans. I'm sorry, against the Colts. Let's try again. 38-10. Daniel Jones, guys, has shown he deserves a chance to lead this team in the future. Now, how big a contract you give him, I'm not telling you pay him like an elite quarterback. I got into this a little bit on the Mac and Jack show this morning on Northeast Streaming Sports. I'm not saying that he should get, elite money, but Daniel Jones, his passing rating is 92.5 this year. 15 touchdowns against 5 interceptions. He's only fumbled the ball. One of his big problems, by the way, he's only fumbled the ball twice and lost it once. So he's turned the ball over now 6 times. That's it all year. That's pretty damn good. That's Tom Brady-ish numbers. Still getting sacked a lot. Offensive line's got to play better, but he's got no weapons to throw the ball to either. Other than Saquon Barkley, he's had a tremendous year. And not to pat myself on the back, but I said here last year on this show and all my other shows constantly to watch out for Saquon Barkley in the 22 season, because sometimes it takes a year to come back from the injury that he had. Not just physically, but mentally. And that's proven to be so. With a game left, Saquon Barkley, 1,300 yards rushing. Thought he had more than that. Another 338 receiving. This is a pretty good football team. They played really good defensively. They played good special teams. When they keep games and Daniel Jones manages games well, they win. They need to get some weapons around him now. There's nobody here. You look at the receivers. Darius Slayton hasn't had a horrible year, but if he's your number one receiver or Richie James is your number one receiver, then you're probably in trouble. Now, there is some hope that Wan'Dale Robinson, who got hurt this year, will step up in year 2. Maybe Sterling Shepard can come back from injury. But the Giants need to bring in some help at the wide receiver position and the tight end position. Nobody's really contributed at the tight end position. Bellinger's got the high reception mark with 30. Now, with all this said, and we'll talk more about this next week when we know the exact matchups, Giants could win a first-round matchup with somebody like the Vikings. They played them tough already. The game's going to be on the road. Daniel Jones plays mistake-free football. They can do okay. CA, how are you, buddy? Good to have you with us. Very busy Friday. Sorry I missed the morning show. That's okay. No problem. We're talking some New York sports here. CA is a great follower of my TGI Sports Talk shows. We'll have these more on. We're going to have more exposure now on Let's Talk Sports as well, both on YouTube and Facebook. Will be replays. We'll be live on Facebook. So we'll be live on Let's Talk Sports. We'll be live on Northeast Streaming Sports. We'll be live on my YouTube page. We'll be live on my Facebook page. So we got a lot of avenues that we're going to be reaching out to people. And CA has become one of my loyal followers, and we enjoy having him with us, even though I know all these games this weekend are fixed. I'm sorry, CA. I couldn't resist just a tiny little jab. Anyway, getting back to Daniel Jones. Better weapons, guys. And you're going to have to probably pay more than you wanted for Daniel Jones because somebody will be interested in his services that needs a quarterback. Think Carolina. Think Denver. Maybe think Miami. We don't know what the situation is going to be with Tua. Who else could be looking for a quarterback that the Giants may need to be concerned about, huh? Raiders. I think Josh McDaniels would love to get his hands on Daniel Jones. How about, and I don't know if Devontae Adams would be happy having Daniel Jones throw to him, but I'll bet you that would be an interesting prospect for Daniel Jones. We mentioned the Broncos. The Commanders. Sorry, team formerly known as the Redskins. Chicago, no. Tampa. We don't know what Tom Brady's going to do. The rumors are that he wants to play one more year, but it may be somewhere else. He may walk away. The Saints, the Panthers, probably the Falcons, maybe the Seahawks, depending on what Geno Smith does. The Cardinals could be looking to move on from Kyler Murray. There will be no shortage of teams looking for quarterbacks this offseason. The Giants will be hard-pressed to sign him to a team-friendly deal, and they need to because they have found their quarterback. They found a coach and a coaching staff that knows how to bring the best out of a quarterback like Daniel Jones, and they've done a great job. And you Giant fans or other fans who want to knock Daniel Jones, I don't like the Giants. I'm not sticking up for this guy because I'm a big Giant fan. Hate the Giants. I'm telling you, this guy is a good NFL quarterback. Not the top tier. He's a good NFL quarterback. And if he'd been drafted in the second round, you'd be loving where he is today. But he got drafted number 6, and it's not his fault. I'll say that until I'm out of breath. So the Giants will face off against the Eagles. How much incentive the Giants really have to win this game? I don't know. Cowboy fans, sorry. I don't think they can improve their lot. I don't think they can hurt their lot. So I think they're locked into the 6th spot, and that's where they're going to stay. The Jets. Oh, what a mess. The Jets Mike White can't play this week. Injuries. He's been limited in practice all week. Joe Flacco will play quarterback for this team. The question is going to be, I'll get to your comment in a second, CA. The question for the Jets is going to be, what's the future for Zach Wilson? I think Zach Wilson could still potentially grow up. I don't think it's going to be in New York any longer. I stuck up for him for a long time. He has not matured. Now LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, has admitted they should not have probably played him in year 1. He's under fire. He may be losing his job. Robert Saleh, I think, should be safe. I think this team, again, if you look at this from the perspective of before the season, this team finishes 7-10, 8-9. I think they'll beat the Dolphins this weekend. They finish 8-9. You would have been very happy with that, not knowing that Zach Wilson would not progress the way the team has. So I think the Jets could possibly move on from Zach Wilson, but Zach Wilson, if he finds the right fit, and who knows what that is, and grows up. Let's put something, we got to lay this blame where it lies. And maybe it lies with the coaching staff force feeding this kid last year. But the coaching staff's going to have to answer this as well. What do you got here, CA? What a mess the league and the media has and still is over the tragic non-football injury. Well, I don't know if I want to call it a non-football injury. We don't know yet whether this would have happened off the football field. If it was from the blunt force of that collision, then it is a football injury. If it was from a pre-existing condition, which we don't know yet, we could call it a non-football injury. And he is better. He did talk to his team today. As I mentioned at the top, they had the ventilator taken out. He spoke to his team via video call. Don't be shocked when the Bills have I'd be shocked if this doesn't happen Sunday. Before the game, a quick little message from Hamlin to the fans on the big screen in Buffalo, and really fire that team up. So as far as a mess, the league, the media, and you're right, this wasn't handled well. Again, as I said Thursday night, CA, and I'll talk more about this on Sunday, of course. But because I've already covered this ground a little bit here today and this morning. But the league, there's no way you're going to convince me the league wasn't ready to resume that game until the coaches said, let's hold on here a second, slow down. I do think they were planning on resuming that game. I think they had all intents and purposes of doing so, even if it was just a reflex action. You saw the players on the Bengals start to warm up after, because somebody told them they were to get ready to play. Now, again, these types of things, the normal reaction after an injury, a normal injury on the field would be to continue play. This wasn't normal. It was obvious from the beginning it wasn't normal, but people don't always process that thing quickly. I do think once the league realized their mistake, after the coaches kind of said, we're taking our teams back to the locker room, we got to clear their heads. They cannot continue to play this game. It wouldn't be safe for anybody. Then the league started to get on the same page. They backtracked the day after Troy Vincent trying to say there was no way they ever thought about playing this game. I think they should have said just what I said. The natural reaction of everybody was that we would continue to play because that's what's always happened. Even when the Detroit Lions player, whose name's escaping me now, died in 1971 or 2 on the field, the game continued because there was no protocol for anything else. Will the league likely have protocol for this type of thing in the future? Yes, and sadly, hopefully we never get to use it. It's sad that we need it. And it'll be interesting to see when it's used, if and when it's used. But they mishandled all of that. And then the player and the human being's health comes first. We all get that. But I do think that I have a right to. I shouldn't say I have a right. I don't think I was wrong or a bad person or didn't care about Hamlin when at the same time I'm praying for this kid as I'm watching what I think was a dead young man on the field. I really felt that way at the time. My mind did drift to, as they're working on him and they're taking him off and everybody's milling around. After he's gone in the ambulance on his way to the hospital, my mind wanders to, well, what happens now if they don't play this game? It's only natural to think that. Doesn't mean I cared any less about Hamlin. And then my mind wanders, well, what if they can't play this game? What about all this? How are they going to figure out all the home field advantage stuff? It still was going to happen. You weren't canceling the weekend. You aren't canceling the season. So I don't think people, and again, timing's everything, right? Skip Bayless, his timing was horrible. But those questions were going to come up and had to be answered. So now they've come to the, and CA, you talk about a little bit about the mess. I don't know if you've seen what they've ruled on today. And again, it's very convoluted, but it would appear to me, based on what I read, Kansas City has no chance to host the playoff, the final, if it's played with the Bills or the Bengals. The Bengals have no chance to host the game. The Bills, and again, that's with these three teams, right? The Bills, however, would have a chance to host the AFC playoff championship game. Best Kansas City can hope for is if they play Buffalo. So the only way the Chiefs can play at home during the AFC championship game is if somebody besides Buffalo gets there, or Cincinnati. Could happen, but it's not likely. So they're penalized by what happened here. And again, they would have been behind in the standings. I understand that if Buffalo had continued on in that game and won. But the Bills, if they win this weekend and Kansas City loses, they will host the game. But we can't make the same assumption if the Bills lost because they played a game less. We don't know what would have happened. Again, there was no perfect solutions. This isn't the worst one, but I mean, adding an 8th playoff team would have been stupid. So anyway, I just kind of backtracked a little there for you, CA. If you want to comment further on anything I just said, you feel free, and I will continue to back up to that. I'm going to move on to some baseball and then some basketball. But we can back up here, CA, or anybody else has any comments they want to get into. I mean, it is a mess. And again, it's not necessary. This isn't necessarily the league's fault. Who thinks you need a protocol for this? I mean, there should be a protocol for if a game has to be called no contest for any reason. Weather? I mean, what if they got into the middle of that game and a severe thunderstorm broke out and went on for hours and hours and hours and they couldn't play? Or a tornado came through and destroyed the field. You would think they'd have a contingency, so if a game wasn't continued, they'd know what to do. Now, obviously, where you are in the season matters as well. Bills worst, obviously. Bengals next. KC got the... No, I don't think KC got the best of the mess, CA. Not the way I'm reading it. Where am I? I had this up here a second ago. I mean, the way I understand this, here it is. If Buffalo and Kansas City both win or tie, a Bills Chiefs championship game only would be at a neutral site. If Buffalo and Kansas City both lose and Baltimore wins or ties, the game would be at a neutral site. I guess that means Cincinnati. If they both lost, Cincinnati wins, they'd have the home field. If Buffalo or Kansas City both lose and Cincinnati wins, now, see, again, there's the other part of this. On a neutral site, a Bills or Bengals versus Chiefs would be at a neutral site. Chiefs can't get the AFC Championship game at home. The Bills can, because as it says here, where is it? Where's this other... I had to look for it last time, and I couldn't find it until later on. Somewhere it's going to say in here, here it is. If Buffalo wins. All right, so let me read this whole thing. So the potential sites have not been, neutral sites have not been determined. The seeds will hold up through the playoffs. If Buffalo or Kansas City both win this weekend, the Chiefs will get the bye to the divisional round. They do get a break there. But if Buffalo wins and Kansas City loses, the Bills will be the number 1 seed, get the bye, and no neutral sites will come into play. So I think, CA, the way I read this, Buffalo is a big winner here. I shouldn't say winner. They do get a chance to host the championship game no matter who they play. Kansas City does not. Cincinnati does not. No matter who they play. They also get a chance to get the bye if the Chiefs lose, and it's a possibility. So, I don't think Kansas City's as big a winner here as you might think. Just saying. It's convoluted. And again, to be fair to the NFL, there was no fair way to do any of this. I really liked the decision that you play these games out. Whoever has the highest seed, again, with this no contest, so Buffalo, and do it by percentage. So Buffalo would still have a chance to be number 1. Kansas City would still have a chance to be number 1. Cincinnati would still have a chance to be number 1. And that team that finished first would have a decision to make. They could decide if they wanted to bye or they wanted the home game, the home field of the championship week. I would have taken the bye, I think. Got to play one less game. So again, comment further if you like, CA, but I just don't see how. I'm not sure the Bills get the worst of this or not. I really don't. It's very possible they don't. At worst, they can't get the worst thing that happens to them is they probably can't get the bye. Well, they can if Kansas City loses. I really think Kansas City gets it worse here than anybody. And I realize, the odds were against them getting the home field at all or getting number 1 seed at all. But again, I'm going to give my Patriots a chance to beat Buffalo on Sunday. Kansas City could have earned it all the way through. So look, it is a mess, and there was no perfect solution here. So on we go. And I'll come back to this if we need to. Moving to baseball, Mets and Yankees. Yankees stepping up their interest in Brian Reynolds, who they've been after. Are interested in for the last couple of trade deadlines and also this offseason. They've been after a left fielder when they lost Andrew Benintendi. That was their first option. They wanted Varsho, or this other kid, his name is escaping me, from the Diamondbacks. Varsho went to the Blue Jays 2 weeks ago, and which will make the other kid unavailable most likely. And now they've set their sights on Brian Reynolds. The only problem is Brian Reynolds is being held hostage basically by the Pirates, who signed him to an extension before last season. He's a really nice player, would fit really well in this Yankees lineup, I think. I would say his game is a little like Benintendi's. He's a plus defender. He gets the ball into play. And he'd be a good fit. The problem is, they want a price tag similar to what the Nationals got for Soto. That's not happening. But he's not going to resign, most likely, with the Pirates long term. I mean, he did sign an extension before last year, but when he comes up again, they're never going to retain this kid. I was trying to see something here. No, don't know. So the Yankees still need a left fielder. Yankees still need a third baseman. Yankees still need to decide who the shortstop's going to be. Yankees still need some bullpen help. So while it's been a decent, and I do love Bader. Obviously, Judge coming back is a big deal, but I love Bader in center. If I could put a Benintendi type, a Reynolds type in left field with those two guys, I'd be so happy. But there's still other stuff. There's a lot of work to be done here. Brian Cashman, the big news with the Yankees this week, really, outside of more talks for Brian Reynolds, was the fact they brought Omar Minaya into the front office to work under Brian Cashman. And they brought in, I think even more importantly, Brian Sabean, who was the former GM of the Giants when they were winning World Series every other year with Bruce Bochy as the manager. Brian Sabean's a very good general manager, and I think it gives them a little different perspective maybe than this front office has had the last several years, and maybe get out of some of the, repeating the same mistakes over and over again when it comes to evaluating players who fit the way the Yankees should be trying to play baseball, or anybody should be. For the Mets, the big news, still no signing of Carlos Correa. Talks continue. The Mets now have found themselves in the same quagmire that the Giants did, and I've had to walk back my comments a little bit about the Giants, saying they had no intention of ever signing him, that they offered him this deal to kind of placate their excuse me, I was distracted by a conversation about the Rafael Devers deal, to placate their fan base. And then they looked for a reason to get out of it. I was probably wrong, now that the Mets have been looking into the same thing. Yeah, I'll back up to your comment here as soon as I'm done with the baseball, CA. I won't be long. So the Mets still they're probably looking to they may need to lop off a year here. They may need to lop off some time, but the Mets knew what they were getting. And to be worried about what's going to happen to a guy's leg 6 or 7 years down the road is a little bit nuts. What else has happened here? Mets hired Eric Hinsky as their assistant hitting coach. We all know that Eric Chavez is now the bench coach, I believe, under Buck Showalter. And Dominic Smith has moved on to the Nationals, former Mets top farmhand, if you will. So let me back up, and I'll get to some basketball before we wrap it up here in the next 15 minutes. But CA, and I do want to, I always want to get to people's comments for sure. Amazing this happened after they messed up with the 2 buys. Added terrible TBA. It's amazing to me. Around the TBA on Tuesday could easily have been pushed back. Only Monday Night Football game played. Super Bowl date couldn't be moved, number one. So I guess you were in favor of them making this game up. Amazing this happened after they messed up the 2 buys and added the horrible TBA week. Oh, you're saying they took away, that was last year was the first year of no 2 buys, only 1. I think that's what you're referring to. And I do think that's bad, but again, that was the danger of adding a 7th team, which I don't think they need to do either. Ironically, my team's fighting for that, right? I don't like the TBA for week 18 either. That just all for TV to give them flexibility. Now, they did it under the auspices of, we can schedule teams so that nobody will have an advantage over somebody else, and knowing what they needed to do. To me, why not do what the Major League Baseball does? Play every game on Sunday at 3:15 or 3:30. Then nobody has any advantage. But you say you're doing it because ostensibly because of that reason, but then you schedule Kansas City on Saturday, so Buffalo knows exactly what they need to do come Sunday. So that reasoning doesn't work out. I'm not really sure about the Tuesday comment, what that's about. I guess you were talking about moving the playoffs all back. I mean, you have to move the whole playoffs back a week to be able to play this game this weekend. Then it would be the only game that was played. and you move all the games back. You have 1 week between the Super Bowl and the championship games, which is fine. But now you're giving all these teams a bye week before they even play their final game. Or somebody. I don't know. You're not wrong, CA. I mean, things were a mess for sure. And I don't know. I do think they gave Kansas City a bigger edge than they gave Buffalo. It all depends on how this plays out Saturday and Sunday, but, you know, it's ugly. Let's look at the NBA quick, and the Nets and the Knicks continue. The Nets continue to surprise the hell out of me. They did lose last night, or their last game, I should say, but they've continued to win right through. Since we talked last week, they're now, I believe, 24-8 under Jacques Vaughn since they fired Steve Nash. Kyrie Irving, who I can continue to say I wouldn't want on my team, is playing great basketball, keeping his nose clean, and playing well enough probably to get a max contract somewhere after the season. Now, I still have my doubts whether the Nets are deep enough to actually contend in the East, because if injuries happen, God forbid, to Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving, maybe Kyrie's drives off the end of the earth, because when you're flat, how do you really know? I mean, GPS doesn't show you probably that you're about to drive off the end of the earth. So anything freakish could happen to Kyrie like that. And he's got to be, the Nets have to be cognizant of that. I'm only partially kidding. But the Nets have played pretty well since we last chatted. They've been beating up on teams not as good as them, I would say. The Hawks, the Hornets, the Spurs. They lost to the Bulls, who are starting to play a little better basketball. Probably one of the bigger disappointments this year has been the Chicago Bulls. The Knicks, on the other hand, won 8 in a row, lost 5 in a row. Now they won 3 in a row again. They're back up to 21-18, 6 in the East. And CA, if you have more to chat about on the AFC issue, I'll certainly come back to it. You can certainly feel free to continue to comment. But they played pretty good basketball here recently again. And I said last week it was a defense that really hurt them last week. Well, since we talked about that, they gave up 88 points to the Rockets, 83 to the Suns. That was an impressive win, by the way, in Madison Square Garden, 102-83 over the Suns. I think that's their signature win of the year right now. Then they beat up the Spurs. They did give up 114 points. They got the Raptors coming up tonight, the team that ended their 8-game winning streak here earlier, not earlier this month, but late in December. So the Knicks play really good basketball. Brunson playing great basketball. RJ Barrett really playing very well after a slow start to the season for him. Julius Randle is back to being the Julius Randle that he was 2 years ago. His attitude is different. He's back to being a consistent rebounder and scorer, 24 and 10. His assists are way down, but that's because he doesn't need to be the point forward anymore. He's got Brunson, so the offense doesn't have to flow through him. Brunson can look to get Julius Randle in a place to get his shots. And Julius Randle still, by the way, for a big man, averaging 4 assists a game, that's not terrible. Quickly's played much better recently. I think he's really a key to this team. Quentin Grimes, who I'm so happy has finally found his way into this rotation, and Coach Thibodeau understands that some of these young guys, Grimes is a shutdown defensive guard. Played really well in college at Houston for Kelvin Sampson. Didn't get much of a chance last year, but played well near the end of the year when he got a chance. And now he's part of the regular rotation. He's up to averaging 28 minutes a game, 10 points. Knicks got to get more consistent with the bench players, though. Toppin's been hurt. Reddish is in and out of the rotation. Derrick Rose is out of the rotation now. They're probably going to need to make a trade here before the deadline and move on from Fournier, move on from Derrick Rose, move on from Cam Reddish, and get some guys that fit the system and can contribute off the bench. Because the bench is what will hurt this team come playoff time. Got a few minutes left. Okay, back to football. Next day announcement, this tragic event exposed the lack of professionalism in the league and the media. Both have fallen while never letting any crisis be wasted for money or control. Well, again, my big fault with the league here, CA, is not so much. I mean, what are they going to do? They aren't canceling games. There's no. First of all, they don't. Even when we had 9/11, they didn't cancel games. They postponed them, and the season got pushed back. You know, yes, there's money involved. There's livelihood involved, and sports are good for people. These guys need to get back to doing their work to take their minds off to what happened to their teammate. I don't fault the league. Again, once you get to Tuesday, you've got to start thinking about what you're doing. Where I fault the league is for leaving the impression Monday night that they were going to continue that game. Now, Tuesday, as part of that announcement or separate from it, Troy Vincent made one that said the league never considered restarting that game. They never told anybody to get warmed up for 5 minutes. I bet you anything that is not true. And again, to give them the benefit of the doubt, they didn't have a protocol that said, here's what you do if a player dies on the field. And the players are conditioned, if somebody gets hurt, they take them off, they start getting ready to start again. And I think the league was possibly going to let these guys continue to play until the coaches realized their guys were not up to doing that. And if coaches and the officials got together, then they got the league involved and said, look, we're not playing this game, taking our teams to the locker room. And to be honest with you, the league probably, again, there was no protocol. I think they would have been better off admitting that, you know, in the very beginning of this, as this tragedy was unfolding, not knowing the seriousness of what was transpiring, we would have continued. The game was going to continue as any other injury until we realized the severity, and then we said, no. It was brought to our attention, the severity, by the people on the field. If they couldn't tell on TV, I guess they were nuts. I think that's where the big problem comes into play for the league. And the media, I mean, I don't really know. I mean, listen, because again, I will tell you my opinion on this. And this will probably we'll probably finish up with this today. We don't need to talk about college basketball in the New York area. We can do that next week. This topic is too important. The media, I thought, showed the professionalism from the media. I don't think was necessarily a problem. They were reporting what was being said by the league, what was being said by the teams. I don't think there was a rush to judgment. Social media, different story. I don't think that people should be, because listen, my mind wandered after the initial shock of what had happened had worn off a little bit. They'd taken him to the hospital. My prayers were still with DeMar Hamlin. I wanted this young kid to survive and be able to live a normal life, if not continue his career. But at the same time, at some point you start thinking, well, what are they going to do about this game? I think it's okay to have both. I can think about two things at once. I can think about somebody's well-being and still plan or have questions about something else. We do it all the time in life. My mother died. My mother passed away. And while I'm in a hospital making decisions, life or death decisions about her life, it doesn't mean other things in my life just stopped. So you have to be able to juggle these things. And so I can make tough decisions about my mom and mourn my mom and still go on with the rest of my life. That's what we do in life. Now, thank God this poor kid didn't die, because this would have been a media disaster. It would have been a disaster for the league. And not to mention, certainly a personal disaster for DeMar and his family. But I really think, and I'm not easy on the NFL, and I was bashing them yesterday with some of the ideas they were coming up with for, contingency plans here. I think they've done the best job they could do, except for misleading us about whether they were going to continue that game. I do believe they had every intention to continue playing that game. And I think left to their own devices, they might have. I think maybe if there's 2 other coaches there, it's possible. I hope there weren't too many. I'm not sure what my coach would have done in that case, to be honest with you. And I hope I'm wrong, because in that moment, that game had to be suspended and had to be stopped. Those players could not go out there and play in that condition. Forget about what happened to Hamlin, because, again, you could have your thoughts and prayers with him. It's happened where guys are paralyzed on the field. Those players, their thoughts and prayers were with their teammate, and they had to go out and continue because that's what was mandated, right or wrong. But this game should not have been continued. It would have been dangerous for the players that continued to play in the state that they were in. It's a no-win situation for everybody. As I said, I don't know if you were with me when I said this, I would rather be playing anybody this weekend but Buffalo. And it has nothing to do with the team maybe being really motivated to win because they want to win for their fallen teammate. And they'll probably have this video message from Hamlin. I hope they do, for the fans at the stadium that day, and really get that place fired up. It's got nothing to do with any of that. I just don't want to play a team like this. I feel bad rooting against this team this weekend. I will do it because we're fans, and that's what the natural order of things is. You're not necessarily wrong in your opinions either. See, I don't want to. I'm certainly not trying to come down too harshly, and I think we're probably more on the same page when we actually think. Sometimes when you're writing things and I'm reading them, it comes out a little bit differently. But I think we're probably more on the same page with this than it may appear from this little byplay right here. My problem was with some people who were ripping people like myself, who later on in the week are asking, okay, what are we going to do about the games? The games are going to go on. It's just a fact of life. And I don't think I showed any less compassion for this young man. I prayed for him all week. I didn't think he was going to survive. But as he did, as we learned he was going to survive, and then he's gotten better all week, that's made this easier. The fact that I said the fact that his first words that he had to write out when he still had the ventilator in was who won the game, I think really took the onus off all the players, all the management, all the fans, and said, our friend, our brother, our fellow player has survived this. He's recovering. He wants us to go out and do our job, and it's okay to go back to cheering for football and continue to have him in our prayers, and that he can continue to recover. Again, I've now repeated my vlog quite a bit here. But CA, I do appreciate you coming in and contributing today. And I hope I do want to send out our best. I didn't get a chance to do it. I usually do it at the top, to our co-host, our host, really, Dan Harris, as he continues to recover from his own battles in the UK. I enjoy Dan's company. I enjoy doing this show with Dan and the byplay he and I have. And I really hope Dan gets healthy enough. And we talked today for a little bit, and he wants to at least start doing a couple of shows soon. And we may have to make some concessions for that, but we look to do it with him. Quickly before I leave, I'm going a little bit over, but see, I want to give you a chance to rebut here. Yep. And had they called the game when they knew his life was in danger and told Bill's staff, "Don't worry, we'll talk tomorrow," and then after doing so, push back the season with some standalone Monday Night Football. Maybe it's hard to say. I mean, could they have done that? Yes. But again, that's also, I mean, there are ways that's unfair to the two teams that were playing as well. They'd be the only teams that had to play there. And then they would have had to play their week 18 games with teams that had all teams would have had a bye week except the Bengals and the Bills. How and I'll go a couple of minutes longer, CA, so you get a chance to respond one more time. And we can pick this up on Sunday. That would have worked out best. But yeah, but again, as I started to say here, that seems like a fair solution to you at the time. But what about the Bills and the Bengals? They're at a disadvantage. So the Bills would have been playing next week against the Patriots, who would have had a bye week. How fair is that? Cincinnati would have played the Ravens with the division on the line, coming off a bye week. The Jets later on would have been playing Kansas City, who have been well rested because they would have had a bye week before the Bills might have earned their bye week. I don't know. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure that people came up with that idea. The fair solution would always have been to get the game played, and everybody would have played the same amount of games. The question was, how do you do that? And again, I guarantee I talked about this myself, that there was a possibility they would push the weeks back, right? Because all you do is really lose. You do lose the week between the Super Bowl and the championship games. Who cares? We don't need 2 weeks off. Sometimes you get crappy Super Bowls because of those 2 weeks off. But what you think is fair for these two teams, CA, and like I said, we can pick this up on Sunday. I don't think it's quite as fair as you think, because now they've got to come back and play their week at 18 games against teams that have had a bye and 2 weeks to get ready for them. I don't see how that's a whole lot. I mean, it's fair because they get to play the games and earn the home field. Everybody would like to have seen that happen somehow. But did it make sense from a logistical standpoint? I don't know. I wish I knew. I think, I'm pretty sure that we'll see a message on that big board Sunday before the game. And listen, as a competitor and somebody who is going to be rooting against the Bills come Sunday, I'm going to be excited to see that on the board, because the number one thing is this kid's health, and the games have to be played. Yes. But number one is his health. And I think it will send a charge through that stadium. And again, if it causes the Patriots to lose because it fires up the Bills and their fans that much more, then more power to them. But that's not why I don't want to be playing them this weekend. This is such a tough situation. I'd rather be playing anybody else just because of the emotions involved here are so high. CA, thank you for tuning in and contributing, because you have become a very valued member of the TGI Sports Talk community. Guys, Keith Engle not filling in, but I guess pulling double duty for Dan Harris. Send Dan Harris a quick note, guys. Dan would love to hear from you guys. Little get well message. We hope to see him back here, at least on a limited basis, if nothing else. And Dan is doing a lot of work behind the scenes while he's not been on the air, and he's going to be helping me set up some. I wanted to get back to my roots and doing some interviews, and I'm going to be working with Dan to get that done. So anyway, guys, have a great week. enjoy the football. Thank God the young man, Hamlin is recovering by all accounts very well. We'll see what the future brings for him. But for now, it's a lot better than it was a few days ago. Let's enjoy some football, but keep this young man in our minds. Keith Engle for TGI Sports Talk and the Let's Talk Sports Network. We've been talking New York sports.